Hey, this is Russell Moore. This is Reading in Exile, where we kind of go around my library looking at book recommendations and talking about them. And of course, every day I ask you, what would you like for me to talk about? And a lot of you said you would like for me to talk about biographies of figures in church history. And so that's a little difficult to do because I have half my library here at home and almost half of it, at my office, which I can't get to, quarantined away from it. So that means there's going to be a lot of categories of biographies that I just can't get to, especially in specific areas, biographies of specific sorts of theologians or ethicists or international figures. So my international section, a lot of that is at the office. So we'll make do with what we have and talk about some biographies that I would recommend. Those of you who know me very well know that one of my favorite theologians of all time is Irenaeus of Lyon. There are not a lot of really comprehensive biographies. This is more of a collection and analysis of sort of his thought in short form by Eric Osborne, but it does include some biographical information. So I would recommend that. We've already talked about this a little bit. One of the best biographies in any category, really, is Augustine of Hippo by a biography by Peter Brown. Just magnificent. Recommend it. Arius, and let me go ahead and specify, these are not biographies necessarily of heroes. So this is a heretic, obviously. Arius, who provoked the sort of controversy that led to the Nicene Creed. This is by Rowan Williams, the brilliant former Archbishop of Canterbury, wrote this. It also is an analysis of thought, but also biographical, really worth your time. When it comes to sort of Reformation, there are a lot of Luther biographies. I reviewed a couple of them in National Review in 2017, the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. But this is still my favorite, Heiko Obermann, Luther, Man Between God and the Devil. It's worth your time. My favorite Calvin biography is this one by Bruce Gordon. I think this seems like this came out during my doctoral program. Read it then. It's still my favorite. Abraham Kuyper, Modern Calvinist Christian Democrat by James Bratt. Really good biography of Kuyper, who's been really influential in my life and thought, with just that great striking photo at the top of it. Kierkegaard has meant a lot to me. There are good Kierkegaard biographies out there. This is not a biography as much as an introduction to his life, to his thought, to his works. But I really recommend it for those of you who are interested in Kierkegaard to start out. I'll talk more about this when we do one on Kierkegaard. But I mean, you can tell with all the book flags I have in it that there's a lot of worthwhile material in there. A lot of good Martin Luther King biographies, including the Taylor Branch series, which are huge, massive volumes. There's a posthumous autobiography, taking some of the writings together. I like this David Garrow, Bearing the Cross, biography of King and of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's, I mean, again, you can see there's a lot of markings there. Around the same time as King, this relatively new biography on Clarence Jordan. Some of you might not be familiar with Clarence Jordan. He was a Baptist who founded Koinonia Farms in Georgia. That was an interracial community during the era of Jim Crow, was harassed by the Klan, and stood for his principles through all of that. This is a really thoughtful biography. This is an autobiography, but Thomas Merton, if you're interested in Merton, his 7-Story Mountain, there's a lot of, if you look at Merton's stuff, it changes, it evolves over time. But this is just a really good kind of reflection on a life. And speaking of Merton, this, The Life You Say May Be Your Own, it's a multi-person biography of Merton and Dorothy Day and Walker Percy, and the Fellowship about the Inklings are really similar, taking these lives and showing where they intersect and how they diverge. I don't have a lot of my evangelical figure biographies here at home, or a lot of my Baptist biographies either, for that matter, because they're mostly at the office. So I don't have, for instance, my Billy Graham biographies. Grant Wacker has an amazing biography of Billy Graham, but I don't have it here. It's near my desk in my office. I do have, though, Carl Henry's autobiography, Confessions of a Theologian, which several people pointed out. The C and the T are large, because he's dealing a lot with his grievances against Christianity today. Love Dr. Henry. Huge influence on my life and thought. Was probably still a little ornery, by this point about his time with Christianity today. But you can see the tenderness also, that's present in his life that comes out there. My favorite Flannery O'Connor biography is this by Brad Gooch. It's from just a couple years ago. Again, you can see there's a lot of markings there. Maybe we'll talk about that when we talk about Miss Flannery a little bit later on. My favorite biography of Walker Percy is this one, Pilgrim in the Ruins, by Jay Tolson. We'll also talk about that more when we talk about Percy, which I'm sure we will. This biography it's not really a biography as much, it is, but also sort of an analysis of Stott on the evangelical movement. John Stott is one of those people who I never met, but his example has meant so much to me ongoingly. And I remember being in England, I guess last year, and I was speaking, and it was a group of Christians there, and someone stood up and said, "How many of you came to faith in Christ as a result of hearing Billy Graham?" And it was almost the whole room, because of his London crusades and other things. And so I stood, and so they did a round of applause thanking me as an American evangelical for Billy Graham. I wish I could take credit for Billy Graham, but of course I can't. But I stood up and then said, I want to return that and thank you for a whole list of people, but John Stott. And a lot of them had been members of Stott's church. Maybe we'll talk about him a little bit later on. And then this biography that just came out, I think it was last year. It is fascinating. Becoming Dallas Willard, about the life of Dallas Willard. Some of you have read a lot of Dallas Willard's work and benefited from it. You would like this, but some of you haven't. But this would be a good introduction to a really, really extraordinary sort of life. So that's just some of them. There's a lot of things I could recommend, and just like every day, I'll get off of this and think, I forgot something. I'm looking right now and can see a Roger Williams biography that I wish I had brought out. So there will be those things, but that's a good sort of taste. Let me know what sorts of things you would like for us to talk about here in Reading in Exile, and I'll see you next time.